How about now? Can you hear me now? That should be yes. So give me a little thumbs up if you can hear me now. No audio yet. Uh-oh. Thank you, Hashem. So, l'chaim to all of you. So we're back on. Okay. My friends, everybody should know this by now, that the entire fundamental idea of all of Kabbalah, all of the Torah, everything that we've been talking about, all revolves around this one central idea of making a zivug between Zer Anpin and the Nukva. And in order to have a zivug, a unification, integration between Zer Anpin and Nukva, Zer Anpin has to receive mochim. Yeah? Without mochin, all right, there can be no zivug between Zer Anpin and Nukva, and that's very bad news for us. Meaning that if we need to constantly stream the infinite light out of the sphere of transcendent oneness into our reality, in order to bring that infinite light into our reality, to be able to bring more consciousness, more vitality, more life, more shefa. Come on, everybody say it with me one time. Shefa. Gotta love the shefa. Literally abundance, but really shefa, it's just this energy. It's probably the best word ever in Hebrew. Can everybody just please write in the chat, shefa? Just shefa. It's the greatest. We want shefa energy, that there should be an incredible abundance of life and health and vitality and just absolute goodness and higher conscious awareness and love and unity in the world. That's what I'm talking about. Shefa, that is right, Yoshua. That's what we want. And we need a little bit more shefa in the world too, because, how are we going to fight this whole corona thing? Yeah. And the caveat to that is that we have to make sure that the shefa that's coming into the world is going to where it needs to be going, and it's not going to the other side. Yeah? Because when the kalipot, when the external forces, they take the shefa, not good. We want that energy to go to the side of goodness, to the side of love, unity, and higher conscious oneness, something we called kedusha. Kedusha. Yeah. And Kedusha means making the world a receptacle, a vessel for the divine will, for the supernal will of Hashem. We want this world to be what's called a dira, to be a dwelling place for the divine will, meaning that every single man, woman, child, every tree, every bird, every stone, we want everything to be the living expression, the beautiful expression of Hashem's divine will in the world. And so in order for that to happen, we have to break free out of our ego states. We have to break free from our own delusional perceptions of reality as being independent beings that give rise to ego, give rise to arrogance, and that's what's causing all of the separation. That's what causes all the disunity. That's what causes all of the hatred, all of the jealousy, all of the conflict between us. And so, in order to become the living expression of divine oneness in the world, we have to bring that shefa into the side of kedusha, and not let the shefa go to the side of the other side, what's called the sitra achra. That's not very good. When the sitra achra, when the other side receives the shefa, Oh, no. Expect coronavirus, expect market crashes, expect, to stub your toe, and all of the other crazy things that might happen. So that is definitely what we don't want. So we want the Shefa to come to Zer Anpin, and Zer Anpin that receives the Shefa is now able to give it to the Nukva, and then that can come into the world and bring more of that higher conscious awareness and love and Shefa and abundance into the world. That's it. That's the whole game right there. We need to bring Mochin to Zer Anpin, so there can be a zivug between Zer Anpin and between the Nukva. That's pretty much the foundation. There you go. All of Kabbalah in a nutshell. Basically, I'm done here. I don't have anything more to teach you, so see you guys later. I'm just kidding. What is that you say? Well, how do we bring Mochin to Zer Anpin so that there can be a zivug between Zer Anpin and the Nukva, you say? Thank you so much for asking. I thought you never would. That's called Torah. What's Torah? Torah is the tool, it's the interface that we as the Jewish people and ultimately all of human civilization is able to tap into the infinite light of the Creator and then stream this mochin, this energy, this consciousness energy to Zer Anpin, so there can be a zivug and then give birth to this energy and bring it into the world. So that's what we need Torah for. So that's kind of like the background for setting up for Pesach, because in Egypt, we didn't have Torah. There was no Torah in Egypt. No. And not only was there no Torah in Egypt, but Zer Anpin, meaning not only did Zer Anpin not have Mochin, but Zer Anpin regressed back into a state of constricted consciousness, which is what allowed the forces of Klipa, the Sitra Achra, the other side, the husks, which we call Pharaoh, which we call Mitzrayim, Egypt. That's what allowed the other side to be able to dominate and to enslave the Jewish people. So we have to figure out how to liberate Zer Anpin, liberate Israel from the clutches of Pharaoh, so that we can bring Mochin to Zer Anpin, Zivug, Shefa, good times. So how do we do that? One word, my friends, it's called matzah. That's right, matzah. Matzah is the secret weapon, that is able to dispel the forces of darkness and to be able to bring Mochin back to Zer Anpin, Zivug, getting out of Egypt, and good times. So with that, we're going to go into our little discourse here. Kabbalah explains the whole idea of the exile of Egypt was that Zer Anpin was in a state of what's called Mochin Dekatnut. That's right. That's what I'm talking about, Elisheva. That's right. Zer Anpin was in a state of Mochin Dekatnut. Mochin Dekatnut translated to literally a small mind, but it's talking about constricted consciousness. Zer Anpin really has three different states of consciousness, which we're actually going to talk about right now. But Zer Anpin was in a constricted state of consciousness in Egypt. And this happens because the Mochin energy was lost because of the transgressions of Israel. We seem to be very, very much into our idol worshiping while we were guests in Egypt. And so because of the transgressions, the sins of Israel. While in Egypt, that caused the mochin to be mistalek, to leave Zer Anpin. And it went back to the root of where Zer Anpin receives the mochin from. Yeah? And so, Kabbalistically speaking, we say that the mochin left Zer Anpin and went back into the throat. Yeah? Which is enclosed within the yesod of Ima, or the supernal mother. Okay? So I want you guys to think of Zer Anpin as the emotions. All right? Work with me here, people. Everybody see the board? Say yes if you see the board. Okay. I want you guys to think of Zer Anpin, Za, as the heart. Yeah? This is the heart. And it's represented by 6 sefirot. We have Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Cool. Those are the emotions. Yeah? You have Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. That's what we call Zer Anpin. And in order for Zer Anpin to be able to have a zivug with the nukva, yeah, which essentially is the malchut, Zer Anpin needs to have mochin. Where does Zer Anpin receive mochin from? Zer Anpin receives mochin from his parents, called Abba and Ima. Abba and Ima. All right? Father and the mother. The father and the mother, they give the energy to Zer Anpin, which allows his mind to mature. He grows and expands from a childlike state, mochin dekadnut, constricted consciousness, which is ego-based, self-centered. And his mind begins to develop and mature and expand. And now he's not just thinking about himself all the time. And so now that he's, so to speak, stepping out of himself and thinking, wow, okay, now how can I become more altruistic? Now how can I not just receive, but how can I also give? So that's now then what allows him to be able to be a mashpia and to bring the energy into the malchut and then essentially into the world. Yeah? So think of Zer Anpin, so to speak, as like the father of creation, the nukva as the mother of creation. Yeah, two divine aspects of Hashem, that when they are unified together, when there's an integration between them, a zivug, then shefa flows to the world. That's right, and that's what we want. So Zer Anpin needs to receive mochin. Where does he receive mochin from? Abba and Ima. Abba and Ima, and so. The way it usually works, yeah? If we look at Abba also as a partsuf, because remember, the innovation of the Arizal system, versus earlier Kabbalists, is that the earlier Kabbalists, they only were dealing in Sefirot. Yeah, that there was these 10 emanations, 10 channels for bringing the divine light from the transcendent realm of Ein Sof, of the infinite, into the world through the 10 Sefirot. Each Sefirah, of course, giving its own particular quality and characteristic, and converting the infinite light into something finite and usable, essentially. What the Arizal did was innovated a new way of looking at the 10 Sefirot, which is called Partsufim. Partsufim. Everybody say Partsufim. All right, write that in the chat. Partsuf. Yeah? Par. Tsuf. It's a nice, cute little word. Partsuf. Yeah? Partsuf. So Partsuf, which really is a system. It's a system of Sefirot. It's a system of Sefirot. So we have the 10 Sefirot, and so if we look at the sphere of Chokhmah, as a complete system, we call that Abba. Abba, that's right. Abba is a Partsuf, yeah, which is an entire complete system of the sphere of Chokhmah. And so essentially Abba has also Sefirot, that's called Chokhmah, Bina, Da, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. And the sphere of Bina, as a complete system, as a Partsuf, also has 10 Sefirot. So we're going to call her, so we're going to say that Ima also has Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Yeah? So we have Abba and Ima, two Partsufim. And the energy begins, the energy flows into Abba. Yeah? It flows into Abba, flows from the Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat of Abba into the Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet of Abba, into the Netzach, Hod, Yesod of Abba. And then, 1, 2, 3. And then when it's in the Netzach, Hod, Yesod, which called the legs, then there's a zivug between Abba and Ima, and Abba gives the mochin, the energy that he has, into Ima. Yeah? And so there's a zivug between Abba and Ima. And now that all of that energy, so to speak, is within Ima, in the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima, and now the Netzach Hod Yesod, within the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima, contained within the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima, is all of the mochin of Zer Anpin. Yeah? So work with me here. If I'm gonna double click on the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima. And when I double click on the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima, okay? What am I going to see there? So this is the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima, yeah? Just zooming in on it, so to speak. Think of the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima, from the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima, as these vessels, 3 vessels. But the Netzach is a vessel, it's a Kli, the Hod is a Kli, and the Yesod is a Kli. What is inside of the vessel of the Kli? Light, yeah? Or we'll call Mochin. And what is inside of the Netzach of Ima? We call that is going to be the Chokhmah of Zer Anpin. What's inside the Hod of Ima? That's going to be the Bina of Zer Anpin. What's inside the Yesod of Zer Anpin? The dot of Zer Anpin. And so now it is the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima that now comes to Zer Anpin, yeah, and becomes his mochin. And so Zer Anpin now receives mochin from the Netzach Hod Yesod from Eva. Everybody say it one time. The Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat of Zer Anpin is given from the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima. Yeah? So if we clean this up a little bit. Oh. Hold on. So if we clean this up, and we'll just make it very, very simple. Simple is key, right? We want simplicity. We want to make things easy. Kabbalah is easy. Everybody say Kabbalah is easy. Yeah? So we have, whoops. My bad, sorry. Trying to get my brushes right here. Oh, there we go. So we have, think of 3 vessels. This is called the Netzach of Ima. This is called the Hod, and this is the Yesod. Who do these belong to? Ima. Ima. What's inside the Netzach, Hod, Yesod of Ima? The Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat of Zeir Anpin. And so now that's what's going to come down and become Zeir Anpin's Mochin. Yeah, so he's going to get Mochin, and he's going to be able to have Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat because he got that from the Netzach, Hod, Yesod of Ima. It's going to come into the mind, so to speak. And the seeker of this really means is that if Zeir Anpin is the heart, represents the emotions, then how do we shift? Yeah? If Zeir Anpin represents the emotions, the heart, how do we give, so to speak, how do we develop, how do we mature our emotions? How do we allow the emotions to be led by the mind, so to speak? How do we take the heart and the emotions out of that undeveloped, egotistical, selfish state? Yeah, it's childlike state that it's all about me, 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 me. Yeah, we have to receive mochin. We have to go to Abba and Ima. And Abba and Ima is using the mind to be able to meditate on the true nature of reality and the true purpose of our existence. When a person meditates on that, when a person contemplates on that, and they're learning the deeper meanings and nature to our existence, then that energy, right, that's called the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima, Ima, right, which is the sphere of Bina. Bina means understanding. And so the more that we use our mind to try and understand the true nature of reality and the true nature of our existence and the ultimate purpose of our existence, and that our entire existence is for the revelation of the supernal will, Abba, it's not just about me, then that is called bringing mochin into Zeir Anpin. And that's what allows the emotions to mature and to be able to develop and shift out of that childlike state, mochin de katnut, into a mochin de gadlut, which is expanded state. I hope that makes sense. So we say that the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima is giving Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat to Zeir Anpin. Yeah? And so think of Abba and Ima as like, this is the mind. Yeah? Zeir Anpin is, this is the mind, this is the heart. You can think of the nukva as the body, or the expression of the heart. And so we bring mochin by meditating and contemplating, and of course doing mitzvahs with kavanah, with intention, that brings the mochin to Zeir Anpin. But when there is chas v'shalom, when there is just the opposite, there is transgressions and sins, and we are not actively working on transcending our own egos and selfish desires and behaviors, then all of the mochin that Zeir Anpin had goes back up to the Yesod of Ima. Goes back up to the Yesod of Ima, and so now basically Zeir Anpin loses the mochin. You, so to speak, lost your head, and it goes back up to where it came from, to the source of where it came from, which is the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima. And so that's so you have now a disconnect. You have a disconnect between the mind and the heart. When there is a disconnection between the mind, when there's a disconnection between the mind and the heart, then that's what's called being in an Egypt state of consciousness. The mochin de katnut is essentially when the energy, the consciousness, has left Zeir Anpin, has left the heart, and now we are, so to speak, left to our raw, animalistic emotions, undirected and unchanneled, and that can be very, very destructive. And so the mochin goes all the way back up to the source, and so there is a disconnect between the mind and the heart. And who is sitting between the mind and the heart, between the head and between the body? You have something called the throat, the garon, yeah? Can you see my garon? No, I got a beer, see? That thing right there, that's called, in Hebrew, that's called garon. Garon. Yeah? Garon, which means throat, and the back of that, which is the neck. So throat. Garon means throat. Here, we'll just make it less confusing. Just throat. Yeah? That's called throat. And who is sitting at the throat? Who sits at the throat? Who is there waiting at the level of the throat to disconnect the mind and the heart? That's called Pharaoh. That's, we'll put him up here, Pharaoh. Pharaoh is at the level of the throat that is there to capture, yeah? To capture the energy and the light that is not in Zeir Anpin. And so now, so to speak, Pharaoh is able to take the energy of the mochin that should belong to Zeir Anpin, giving him strength, allowing him to be in control, but because of the mochin went back, the mochin went back into the mind. Pharaoh now is at the throat, and he's able to capture that energy, and that is called being a slave to Pharaoh. Because now Pharaoh on the other side, in the Sitra Achra, is receiving all of that energy, and so therefore the Jewish people are in trouble while they're in Egypt. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. We have the mochin, we have Zeir Anpin. The mochin is stuck in up there, so to speak, outside of the reaches of Zeir Anpin, and Pharaoh is capturing all of that energy, which is called the Garon, which by the way is also called Mitzrayim. Yeah, Mitzrayim. That's right, Mitzrayim, which is yeah. So Pharaoh and Mitzrayim, they're all attaching themselves, and they're all getting the energy of Zeir Anpin, taking his energy, not getting it to where it needs to go. Okay. So, yeah, Zeir Anpin was in a state of constricted consciousness, and this happens when the mochin is lost. And they return to the throat, which is enclosed within the yesod of the ima, the da'at, which is the main mechanism of the mochin, because chokhmah and bina produce da'at, which is the true energy that is able to power the emotions, that is able to affect the emotions. And so Pharaoh, who stands at the back of the neck, then prevents the shefa from flowing back down to Zeir Anpin and takes it for himself, feeding and strengthening the Sitra Achra, the other side, and the klipot, which are the external forces. So that's pretty much what we just explained. And so now, if we take a deeper look at the dot itself, we look at the dot, yeah, if we're going to take a look at this dot right here, if we zoom into the dot, okay, there's actually two aspects of dot that we're talking about dot. Yeah, so we have chokhmah here, we have bina here, and then we have dot. And we say the dot is actually comprised of two different components. One is called chasadim of dot, and we have givurot of dot. These are two different energies, yeah? We'll call this unity energies, or unifying energy. And the gvurot is diversifying energy. Two very distinct different energies, both super important. Yeah? And within the dot there's chasadim energy and there's gvurot energy. How many chasadim energies are there? There are 5 chasadim energies, that they're chesed, gvura, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod. And how many gvurot energies are there? There's also 5 energies, chesed, gvura, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod. Why do we have 5 chasadim energies and 5 gvurot energies? Well, because there are really 5, oops, wait a second. That's 6, hold on. Why am I not seeing anybody telling me that, Rabbi, come on. Oh, 5 energies, yeah? The function, remember we said the dot, the energy of the dot flows from the mind into the heart. There has to be a connection between the mind and the heart. In order for a person to be able to have some type of emotional shift, to be able to transform the emotions from being undirected, from being uncontrolled, going from this raw, animalistic state into a state where the emotions are being harnessed and constructively and healthily being expressed, then that's what's called, you need dot. So the dot flows into the body. And so if we're talking about the body, we have 5 aspects of the body. Remember, Zer Anpin, yeah, Zer Anpin has 5 essential parts to him, which we'll call, which we said are like chesed, gevura, tiferet, netzach, and hod. And there's also the yesod, yeah? But we don't consider the yesod to be a primary aspect of emotion. The yesod itself is not, so to speak, in its emotion, but it collects all of the 5 primary emotions and, so to speak, mixes it all together, makes a cocktail, and now figures out what is the best way now to give this energy over. And so there are 5 primary energies that are flowing from the dot. So you have Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, and Hod. These are 5 Chasadim energies. Everybody say Chasadim, yeah? Which translates literally to love, but it is the essential power and energy that Za needs, Zer Anpi needs, the heart needs, the emotion needs, in order to come to life, to be expressed, yeah? And so each one will go according to its corresponding sefirah. So the chasadim, so we said the energy of chesed will go to, right, that goes to the sphere of chesed. The chesed of gevura will go, of course, to the gevura. The tiferet will go to the tiferet. The netzach, yeah? And so each of the chasadim now, the Arizal calls these energies like the water that irrigates the tree. It nourishes the tree. It vitalizes the tree. The Arizal calls these 5 energies, the 5 chasadim aspects of the dot. That's the energy, those 5 primary energies that nurture the Etz Chaim, right, Zer Anpin, and gives him life and allows him to grow and develop. We also have the 5 Gevurot energies. The 5 Gevurot energies, which are coming also from the dot, those do not go to Zer Anpin. Those do not go to Zer Anpin. Those do not belong to Zer Anpin. These 5 Gevurot energies do not go to Zer Anpin. They are supposed to go to the Nukva. That just like Zer Anpin needs to receive those energies, so too the Nukva also has these 5 primary sefirot. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod. And then, of course, she also has Yesod. But what this means is that if Zer Anpin is the emotions, and then the Nukva is the expression of those emotions, there needs to be a zivug between the expression and between the emotion and the expression. So think of like a person that really, feels they want to express themselves, but they can't. That something is like inside of their heart, but it's not being expressed. That's when there's no zivug between Zer Anpin. And so every emotion, so to speak, needs its corresponding sefirah, place to be able to be expressed. So the function of the chasadim energy, the gvurot energy, these 5 guys, the chasadim, gvurot, netzach, hod, yesod, they're supposed to go to the nukva. So the way it goes is that these gvurot energy together, they travel to Zer Anpin, but they bypass all of his sefirot because they don't belong to him. They don't belong to him. They go into Zer Anpin, but they go directly to the Yesod. He receives, if we're talking about the dot, the energy of Jot, flowing into Zer Anpin, the chasadim energy flow into him, and they, so to speak, permeate into his body. The gevurot energy, also coming from the dot, go directly down to his yesod, and then are transferred to the nukva in this first initial zivug. So he receives the gevurot energy, and then immediately gives them to her, to the nukva, and now she's able to receive these gevurot energies. So just to keep things super, super simple, in order to come out of Egypt, Zer Anpin needs Mochin, and Mochin is Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. And the Da'at has two aspects of it, Chasadim of Da'at and the Gevurot of Da'at. These unifying energies and then these diversifying energies. They both flow into Zer Anpin. Zer Anpin receives the Chasadim energy, he receives the Gevurah energy and then gives them to the Nukva. And the Chasadim energy is what nurtures him, the Zer Anpin, and the Gevurot energies is what nurtures the Nukva. Okay, I hope that wasn't too complicated, but the point of mystically, Kabbalistically speaking, what was happening in Egypt is that all of this energy was being taken by Pharaoh. Yeah? All of this energy was being taken by Pharaoh. It was not being received by Zer Anpin. And so therefore, there is this disconnect between the mind and the heart. Okay. Yeah. So how about I'm going to stop here for a second. Any questions, clarifications? This is just kind of like a very important opening introduction into be able to understand the developmental process of Zer Anpin, because depending on the what stage of development Zer Anpin is in will determine the state of our reality. So to speak, so think of Zer Anpin and the Nukva as these supernal realities that, depending on which stage of development Zer Anpin is in, will affect what is happening down here. The more Zer Anpin is just in a state of constricted consciousness, mochin dekatnut, then there is no zivug between Zer Anpin and the Nukva, and basically the mother of creation, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, does not have any vitality, energy, shefa. She doesn't have any shefa to give to us, her children, to be able to bring into the world. And so things start breaking down and you start getting all kinds of viruses and crazy things happening. And so we want to bring Zer Anpin to a state of mochin de gadlut, expanded consciousness, state of maturity, as quickly as possible, so that there can be a zivug between Zer Anpin and the Nukva, and then she can now give birth to the new shefa, new life, new energy, new vitality, to be able to come into the world and making everything just peaches and cream. Chaim. So I'll open it up for some questions. If you guys have any questions in the comments, in the chat, we can do that now. Nelson, Shalom Nelson. So does the Nukva get any chasadim or only gevurot? Or may I give a comment on that too? Good question. No. So basically it works like this. I'll try and make this as simple as possible. We said Zer Anpin receives both portions. Yeah? Zer Anpin receives both. Yeah, so we'll say this is Za, and this is Nukva. We said there's from the Yesod of Ima, which contains within it the Da'at, yeah? But we said the Da'at is split up into two different aspects. There's Chasadim and there's Gevurot of Da'at. The Chasadim, both the Chasadim and the Gvurot, Zer Anpin receives. He receives the Chasadim and the Gvurot also come to Zer Anpin, but he immediately gives them to her. That's what builds her up. The Chasadim is what nurtures him. The Gvurot are what nurtures her. And so now he's able to grow, she's able to grow, and now they're both, so to speak, ready for the second zivug. This happens in what's called the primary zivug. That's called the primary zivug, which Zer Anpin receives the gvurot of the nukva and then gives it to the nukva. But that's just the initial stage. The second stage, the real stage, is when there is another zivug. There's another zivug, and Za receives new chasadim. He receives new chasadim, yeah, and then now the nukva is not back to back anymore, but she is now face to face. And then what's called the second zivug, now he gives her the chasadim. So the first zivug, the first unification between Zer Anpin and Nukva, is kind of like the preparatory stage, where he gives her the gvurot and he makes her a kli, makes her a vessel. And then the second zivug is where he receives new chasadim energy and then gives her the chasadim energy. And when the nukva now, that already had the gevurot energy, which is like the vessel, so to speak, and now she receives the chasadim energy, when there is a chasadim and gevurot energy together, that's what creates the child, so to speak. That's what produces the shefa and all of the souls and everything to be able to come into the world. So two zivugs, one zivug, she receives the gvurot first, creating the vessel, and then she receives the chasadim from Zer Anpin, and that's what essentially creates the shefa. So when the shefa is coming into the world, into our realm, it's chasadim and gvurot energy together. I hope that answers the question. Let me know if you didn't. L'chaim, Josh. Or is it the artist formerly known as Yoshua? Morris, Shalom Morris, where exactly does Pharaoh capture the mochim? Good question. We said this is the yesod of Ima, and there's chasadim. And so when the mochin goes back up to the yesod of Ima, that's where Pharaoh is. Pharaoh is at the level called the garon, which is the throat. Yeah? And so Pharaoh, so to speak, is able to suck the energy from the dot. He's able, what's called yinika, that the sitra achra, the klipa, is able to, so to speak, take the energy and to like suck that energy from the yesod of Ima, giving it strength. Oh, currently known as Yoshua. Great. Yofi. All right, cool. Any other questions? Great. If not, then let's do a quick recap, and then we'll sign off. We said the idea of the Jewish people being slaves to Pharaoh in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, Kabbalistically speaking, means that Zer Anpin was not able to receive energy because of the sins of the Jewish people. The energy left Zer Anpin, and Pharaoh was able to take all of this energy, and that's what caused the enslavement. And so Passover, the exodus from Egypt, is essentially now bringing that mochin back into Zer Anpin and allowing Zer Anpin to overpower the forces of Pharaoh and to be liberated out of Egypt. The levels are confusing, Morris. Which levels? Tomorrow we'll make a little bit more order out of it. It's just one of those like fundamental things that when you kind of learn the system and you just have it mapped out, it just makes things much, much, much simpler, because then you can start just to plug it in and to apply it to all the different things that we're talking about throughout the years, whether it's the festivals, the holidays, or whether it's the mitzvahs and the different things that we do, because they're all based on this one map. But tomorrow we'll go into the 3 primary levels of Zer Anpin's development, and we'll try and make it as easy and as clear as possible, so don't worry about it. What does this have to do with the mitzvahs? With the matzah? Noah. Oh, so glad you asked, my friend, but we are out of time, my friends. So we're going to have to talk about the matzah tomorrow. This is just kind of the setup. So stay tuned, kids. Elisha, how can we apply this practically? Well, the practical application of what we just learned was really talking about what is happening and what is preventing us from having emotional balance and emotional control. So we didn't talk about what do we do about it yet, because we just kind of like started this whole idea. But it's not, it's first understanding, why do we find ourselves in emotional despair? Why do we find ourselves, so to speak, slaves to our emotions? Yeah, a person wants to like change a habit, to change a pattern, to change a behavior. They know it up here, right? That I have to change my diet. I have to stop eating so much junk food. I have to exercise more. I have to speak a little bit nicer to my mother, or whatever it is, that I may know what it is that I need to do, but all that knowledge is up here. In my heart, though, I'm, so to speak, enslaved to my old patterns, to my old emotions. And so that's called being a slave to Pharaoh in Egypt. Pharaoh prevents the connection between the mind and the heart, where I don't feel, I'm not able to truly shift emotions that are destructive and harming, and I don't want to feel what I feel. I don't want to feel this way, and I can't, because the consciousness and the mental awareness of how I do want to feel and how I do want to behave, that's kind of stuck up here, and there's no connection between them. So that's called being a slave to Pharaoh in Egypt. Tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about the more practical applications of how do we come out of Egypt? How do I bring the mochin back down into the heart in order to be able to have emotional mastery? How can I transform my emotions from things that were negative and destructive and egotistical and selfish? How do I bring mochin and to be able to affect a total transformation in our emotional states and to become masters of our emotions and essentially masters of our behaviors? That's pretty much the whole idea of Pesach. I'll give you a little hint though, has to do with drinking 4 cups of wine and eating 4 pieces of matzah. So a little teaser for tomorrow, because that's exactly the tools that the Torah is giving us in order to be able to affect this transformation, this change, this liberation from our own personal Egypt and Mitzrayim. Did that make sense? I hope so. Tov, my friends, have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, unless Mashiach comes, and we're all going to virtually do this from Yerushalayim. Hopefully not virtually, but well, to see everybody there. So I'll see you guys tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Peace.